What's up, everyone? I am Kirby Green. This is my 2023 Hyundai Elantra N, and it is 6-speed manual. All right, so what got me into cars is actually my father was a dealer with at a few different car dealerships when I was younger, and he would always bring me in, and that's when I guess I grew that fascination of different cars that he had there. He would take me along with like some of the test drives and stuff like that. So hearing cars for the first time, I still remember I was in I believe a 1994 Pontiac Bonneville with the supercharger, and hearing that whine for the first time, I think that what's did it for me, particularly. But since then, I just always read the magazines, the Road and Track, Car and Driver, Motor Trend, all that. And since I was really young, just always burying my face in the magazine, even before I could even read. Having the liberty to go to the New York Auto Show with my father, who he also worked at the Jacob Javits Center, going there and getting to sit in all the cars and hear them come in, that I think really just opened up my mind of what it could be. So when I was younger, I'd be in school drawing different type of like cars I could think of, like my own different concepts. And from there I would get in trouble because, you're supposed to do your work, but I'd be doing my work and still designing these cars. And I think that's when that passion really grew. I wanted to design cars when I was younger, and that didn't exactly work out because things started changing. Everything started going into computers at that time. But as you can see with this car, I'm still like in a way designing wraps and throwing a whole bunch of different craziness on every single car I've owned. So I'd say that obsession has definitely lingered. Like, as they say, you don't overgrow your toys just get bigger as you grow. So this is my 32nd car, and I'm 30 years old. So every single car I've owned, I've customized like crazily in some type of way. So from there, it just goes up. My first car, what did it for me, is a 1994 Volvo 850 Turbo. Now, when I was younger, I asked my father at around like 16, I was like, hey, can you get me a car? He said, no, you got to work for it. So I worked, got this Volvo 850 Turbo, and it was green. It was turbo, so I didn't really know what I was doing with cars, but that's when I started. Like, it was my first car, so I got wheels for it. I fixed like a dent that it had in there, and then my first trial and error. So the day that I bought the car, the intercooler hose popped off on my way back home. So I had to figure that whole thing out, and never working on cars before, you know, having something break on you is the most perfect way to figure out how to fix your own things. So from there, did a tune-up, my first tune-up, did my first drive belt, all that. So I ended up selling that and I got to a, what was 2006 Lincoln MKZ, which is weird. It's like an older person's car, but that was all-wheel drive. I wanted to see what all-wheel drive was like, so I got one of those oddball cars, and I ended up getting into an accident with that one, so I didn't really get a chance to really dig into that, but having my own issues with the all-wheel drive system and you know, brakes failing, so that was my first brake job on that car. Then I sold that, and then I got into a 1984 Chevy Corvette, and that one, like, I really wanted. I saw it at this it was a mechanic shop just sitting there, and I knew, I was like, man, I want this car, I want this car. So I ended up talking with the guy. He got it up and running for me, and I had to do an injector job. The timing chain cracked, like one of the cam gears actually cracked on it, and I got that fixed. But I love that car. That was my first manual transmission. I actually brought that car not knowing how to drive stick. I called my father like, hey, I brought a car, and he's like, what? I'm like, hey, I need you to come pick it up because I don't know how to drive this thing. So he picked it up for me, and I went out that very same night and learned how to drive stick in it. Like, I stalled in the middle of an intersection like 5 times, but I ended up getting it. So learned that and kept that car for a while. But at that time I was about 18, and having that type of car so young, you don't really know everything, but you think you do. And I ended up selling that car. I got into a Cougar, a Mercury Cougar, and that was a XR7, so 5.0, and that was pretty interesting. First Ford product. Well, the Lincoln was, but this was my first like V8 that was a Ford product. So learned how to change certain things in that, the water pump and stuff. So that was my first like big job on one of those cars. So held on to that for a while. Got tired of the automatic because now I got the bug for manual, and sold that. Got a Mazda MX-6, which is a weird one. That was in stick shift, and that car was pretty awesome. It was the 4-cylinder model. It wasn't even the LS that comes with the Mazda 6-cylinder. So that car was a great car. It was my first real JDM, if you will, car. Like, I don't even see them around anymore. And that car I held for the longest amount of times, got the most tickets with. It was the loudest by far. It had no mufflers. It was rusty. I think the mufflers rusted off. And that car was just like obnoxiously loud, but it was just so fun because I was back in manual, and that thing was just amazing. And I don't know why I sold that thing, but actually I do. I ended up selling it because I went out one day and it would not start. And I ended up just saying, you know what, it's for someone else to deal with, and posted it. And the guy came from far. He went to go pick it up, and I told him it didn't drive, it didn't start. And lo and behold, he turns it on, starts it, drives it around the block, and here's your 1,000 you asked for. So, you know, what can you do at that point? So got back into GM, got a Buick LeSabre, a limited, which wasn't my idea. In my opinion, it's an ugly car, but I love that car, and drove that for a while. My father found it for me. He's like, hey, if you need a car really quick, it's a cheap little GM car. And that ended up being like one of the most comfortable cars I ever owned. And I really missed that car, but got the itch for stick shift again. So sold that, and I got into my first Saab. And as I go on the list, I get a lot of sobs because it was a 1999 9.3 OG low turbo, they call it. And that car I kept for the longest amount of time. That thing was absolutely bulletproof. Never had any issues with it, really, other than it being super loud, but it was stick shift. It was already lowered. I threw some wheels on it. It was the first car that I ever wrapped. So I wrapped the fenders, and then I ended up plasti dipping it. It was the first car I ever got a tune on. So I got a tune from eBay, this guy who's like specializes in ECU, so I had to send it in to him and he sent it back, and the list goes on and on. So I ended up selling that Saab. I got into a 9.5. That was another car that I tuned. That was automatic. Then I got another 9.3, which was the V6. It was the 9.3 SE, and that car, I couldn't find parts for. It was also stick shift, and I ended up selling that because I really couldn't find anything for it, but that car was also amazing. Got another 9.3. Got a Pontiac Grand Prix GTP. So it was the 1995 with the two-door, had that nice looking front. That was automatic, heads-up display, 3.4. I got another Pontiac after that. That was a Grand Prix GTP also. I sold that within the first week because the seat had an issue like leaning, and I didn't want to deal with that. And then I got into what else did I get? I think I got another Saab after that, another 9.5. I really like Saabs. And that car gave me some issues with like low oil pressure. I was freaking out. I didn't know what to do. I was like, I just bought this car and it has low oil pressure, and ended up finding out that was an issue with a lot of 9.5 Saabs. So I kind of left Saab alone after that, even though right now I want another Saab. Got into a Crown Vic. So again, another Ford product. I love my Fords, love my Chevys. I'm just a car guy. Like, there's no set best car for me. I really like a lot of different cars. So this was like the list that I made when I was younger of cars that I wanted to own. So I had two Crown Vics at that point. I love the Panther platform. Threw some wheels on that, painted both of them. Both of them were white, and I painted them both black. They were both P71, so it was police packages, and had some fun with that for a while. That was a really like good all-around big car, good on gas. Had three Mustangs. All of them were stick shift. My favorite one was probably the last Mustang I owned, and that was the car that I had the most issue with. So for 2 years, had that car. It ran perfectly until it didn't. Had no issues whatsoever, and then I started modding it like really heavy. So I got Raceland coilovers, got the whole tubular suspension done, nice ESR wheels, good big brakes from the Cobra, Mach 1 seats, Mach 1 gauge, the Mach 1 hood, I believe. I bought a supercharger for it. It was a Vortec V2, and got nitrous for it. God, like everything you could think of. I wrapped it, I painted it, splatter. That's where I get this splatter thing from. I splattered the whole interior. It was like really wild looking. Like, what are you doing? It was just really wild. And that car, like, that's where a lot of people got to know me, because they're like, this is really crazy. Like, what are you doing? I'm like, I have no idea. I just know I needed to be a little crazy. And so the car was so low. Every car has an inner fender liner. And because it was so low to the ground, the tires end up scraping the inside wall of the fender liner. And it has what you call a GEM module, which is like a body control module. Never heard anything about it. And the wires were touching. So every time I hit a bump, my windshield wipers would go off, the battery light would come on. I thought it was alternators, so I bought like 5 different alternators. It was a bunch of weird things going on. And then one night I came from Bobaru and turned my car on, started to drive, and then the car was making the starting noise as I'm driving. So it was like while I'm driving. So that ended up being really crazy, and I couldn't figure it out. I took it to an electric guy. After he charged me a total of $5,300 for all the electrical work, he said he couldn't find it, and if he can't find it, no one can, because he replaced all the wiring in there. And just running into some random Mustang owner, he's like, hey, you got a module under there and you're probably rubbing. Could I see it? We lifted the car up and he found the issue. So I ended up getting all that rewired. Had ghost connection, that's what they call it. And the car ended up, I usually park in my complex like facing outward. So I'm in front with my friend with the hood open. The car was in reverse because the emergency brake didn't work. And the car ended up running into the house backwards. So that was crazy. The car really didn't get much damage. The house, I like damaged the gutter. So that was a crazy story on that one. And I ended up fixing everything with the car. I sold it and it did have a stage 2 clutch on it. The kid ended up selling it because he said it was a little hard to drive stick. So I tried to buy that car back, but they parted it out. So all those parts, that whole car, it hurts me. That is somewhere just broken up, but that was on me for selling it. Before we got into the Hondas, I did have a Civic. It was a EP3, I think. I'm not too familiar with all the Hondas, but I ended up getting that car from a friend, and immediately it gave me issues. So I know they say like Honda's the most reliable. I probably just had a lemon, but that car instantly, I think I was trying to fix the mirror and the window broke. Then it started tapping really bad, even though it had fresh oil in it. It had the weird idle issue that they normally have, like just vroom, vroom, all that. So I ended up just selling that car, and that was honestly one of the fastest sales I've ever made of any car I've ever posted. Mind you, out of like 30 cars, I posted this car even with all the issues. Someone came like 10 minutes later and bought it. So Facebook Marketplace, you know how annoying Facebook Marketplace is, or is it still available? I must have had like maybe 200 messages in that like 10-minute span. And someone came and drove it away just as it was, tapping, window broken, a bag in there. People bought it. So it was just like a really interesting experience. Like that probably was the best experience selling a car. So if you want to sell cars, look into Hondas, you know, got the name behind it. But after that, I got more familiar before all of this with stick and my friend's EK hatch, I believe, and it was a B16, and that car was really something to drive because you got to rev them up really, and they drop really fast. So it was really interesting to drive that. So I've never owned any BMWs. I did want it was an old 535 from like 1990, the early 1990s. And I had my Saab and I was going to trade this guy for his BMW. And we end up being friends now. His name's Clinton. And, you know, it was just funny how you run into people from weird, like little interactions like that. We never got a chance to trade, but we are very like, you know, known with each other. So other than that, if I had to say what my favorite car was so far, that's not this being that it's new. I'd have to say the Corvette because the seating position and the gauges, they're really nice, really retro. It's digital. The first one was manual. The second one was automatic. That's why I sold it. I wish that car was manual, but it's really hard to find that year Corvette with the 6-speed Tramic. Actually, it's not Tramic. It's a 6-speed ZF from BMW, I believe. So that transmission was really good, but it was really hard to find a like 1990 through like 96 Corvette with that transmission. They're all like way above. All right, so my least favorite car would probably go to, I'd say, the Cougar. Probably because it just, even though it was V8, it was auto, and it just didn't move like how it should. And I felt like the car really had no soul. Like, I know some people might get mad at me on that one, but compared to all the other cars that I've driven, like they all were known for something like they're great at, they're good at, and they were fun. The Cougar just wasn't really fun. It was just like more of an everyday car with a little bit of rumble. Now, there's things I could have did for it, but when you want the V8, I feel like you go for the Mustang because when it comes to those like two valve V8s, you get you a two valve, you get you like some cams, you call it a day, or the head job, call it a day, or the supercharger, any one of those things. Like with the Mustang, it just feels different. The rear end is a lot more live. I think all around the Mustang is just the way to go. The Cougar is more for those that are older that just want to like relax. So I'd say that's my least favorite car out of all of them. But when it comes to most fun out of all was definitely the Mustang because that's kind of what made me love Mustangs. So I used to work at a dealership called World Class Auto. So it was a lot of like luxury higher end cars. So one day we end up getting in this, I believe it was a 2014 Roush Stage 2 or whatever they call it. It had a supercharger on it and it had a Flowmaster's exhaust. And man, when I tell you, I took this thing out, my job was to take the cars that came in and check them, drive them around, fill it up with gas. And it was a cool job. And I think driving that Roush Mustang changed my view on cars like all the way. I'm like, whoa. Like, I think I need a V8 rear wheel drive for the rest of my life. And I remember going home telling my girl, like, yo, I need a Mustang. Like, I need a Mustang today. And the first time I got in that car, I drove it and I remember turning out and just giving it a little bit of gas and just to have the back end kick out on me. I was freaking. I'm like, whoa, what in the world? I'm like, so this is the memes. And just learning how to drive that car for me, I think getting used to the back end, getting used to controlling that power and feeling it, I think that like messed me up internally. Because after that, I'm like, man, I don't think I can get into another front wheel drive or all wheel drive car because this is what fun is. Like, I think Mustangs just do it well. So I think when you have a certain amount of money, let's say you got 5 grand or less, or even 10,000 or less, and you want fun, you want a nice rumble, you cannot go wrong with a Mustang. V8 stick shift preferably. But if you can't drive stick, learn how to drive it. I feel like driving stick shift is the way to understand cars, feel them, be one with it. Hyundai wasn't a brand that I was looking into at all. So I remember seeing the Veloster when it, like before it even came out, Doug DeMuro did like a video on the Veloster and it was coming out and that nice blue, that performance blue. I remember seeing the seat belts and watching the whole video like, whoa. I was looking at a Focus ST at that time with RS and I'm like, wow, look at Hyundai coming out with a hot hatch. Like that's interesting. And they said 275 horsepower at the time. So I remember seeing that and being like really impressed. And I was like, I really just don't trust Hyundai as a brand. So I never really dug too deep into it until I ended up running into a guy that had a Veloster at a car show. And I was just talking to him about it, like, hey, how do you like it? How are you enjoying it? And I was like, hey, you mind if I sit in it? He let me sit in it, turned it on. He showed me the pops and crackles and stuff. And I was like, wow, it's pretty interesting. Like wow, look at Hyundai. The seats were nice. And, I was kind of sold at that point. And he took me around the block in it. And again, I was just like, yeah, I think I want this car in the future. So let's fast forward. They end up coming out and announcing the Kona N and the Elantra N. So I was big on trucks at that time. So at the time, me and my wife were looking at the Bronco, the Ford Bronco at the time. I remember I test drove the Bronco and I was like, man, this is the truck I'm going to get. And it just ended up working out that it didn't work out. So every Bronco that I looked at was like really high on markup, like 10,000. I remember I called the place up in like Bridgewater Ford, and they said, hey, we don't have any markup here. So I went there, built it, was feeling good about it. And then they dropped a bomb on me of $89,000 for a Wild Track Bronco, which is pretty crazy. And I think from there, I went to All American Ford up in Old Bridge, New Jersey. And again, another place we don't have markup, but we have our vehicle tax, whatever. So another 10,000 plus 4,000 luxury car tax. I've never heard of it. So it didn't work out with any of those Broncos, so I was really big on the Kona N. So looking at the Kona N, and I'm like, man, I think I like this thing. I think I might want this. And then they announced the pricing because I was waiting on it. It was like October of 2022, and these cars were going to be new coming out late 2022. So actually, was it 22 or 21? One of those years. It was all a blur, but end up looking at the Kona, wanting the Kona, and saying that's what I was going to get. And then my fiance said, hey, you should look at the Elantra. That car looks like it has more space, because she's big into cars too. So she started looking at the Elantra, and it's like, hey, that back seat seems a little bigger. Then she said, hey, the seats light up. And I'm like, oh, well, I think the Kona is going to light up too. So it was just like little things. And I'm like, no, I still want to sit up higher. And I really looked at the Elantra and saw the interior, and I think that's what kind of pushed me for it. I'm like, that interior is really nice for $32,000 at the time. So I didn't get a chance to actually sit in one or test drive one. I knew they were coming out mid-December. That's all I knew. So I end up tracking down every dealership, and I was just on my phone every day, searching, like doing the most amount of research of every Elantra N that was going to be coming in like a 1,200-mile radius I was willing to do to drive. So end up finding one, and the way that I found it was I put Elantra N. They have it in their database as NN, not N line, which is weird. So I put two N's, and then I found more cars being delivered. So I'm like, oh, okay. So I found one in Maryland, and we were supposed to go get it. It was the Intense Blue. It was one of the first cars that were going to be sold on the East Coast. So I think a guy in New York had his first, and then I end up getting the second one in the East Coast. So the first one in Jersey, it was a DCT Performance Blue model, which is one of my favorite colors in this car. And we got that really early December. And I loved that car. I did so much to it, did intake downpipe, water meth injection, a whole bunch of things. I got tuned by N75, and that turned that car into an animal. So you figure 250 wheel horsepower all the way to 400 with, just these little bit of things. It's a big difference in the car. And I just completely fell in love with the car. So remember, we went to go take at the time we had a Mitsubishi truck. We met with Country Calvin, his name was, at one of the Hyundai dealerships, Pohanka, and they wanted a markup for it. So the way we got it was, I called them, hey, you guys are getting a Performance Blue, and another 2 weeks, could I put a deposit down on it? And he said, 2 weeks? I'm looking at it right now. I said, what? Oh, that's awesome. How much you guys want for it? And then he gave me the rundown. He's like, hey, every car comes with a markup. And I said, not around here, don't. And it was a little before Christmas. And I was like, so 45 is the best you guys can do. I don't think I can do that. So I ended up hanging up the phone, and he made that deal work, because he called me back again and he said, hey, what could I do to put this car under your tree? So sorry, it was a spider web on me. So he said, what can I do to put this car under your tree? I said, honestly, you could come down on that price. And at the time, I'm like, give me near double what I want for my truck. So he ended up coming down on the price, and he met us halfway, and in like a bit closer Maryland, and he took the truck as the trade, and we drove off with the DCT Elantra N. So we had that car for 60,000 miles, and that car just was awesome. And every car comes with its issues, especially being the first of. I ran into a injector issue, so that wasn't fun. I was just randomly driving and then lost. It was misfiring pretty bad, so I drove it to the dealership. They took care of it. But that car was a absolute blast. And for me, being like more of a manual driver, like I really don't like to have like performance cars in automatic. More so as like a sidecar for every day. But that DCT is really good for what it is. Like you really don't miss it as much because you do got the paddle shifters, you got all the nice little things. But we end up getting rear-ended in mid-March of this year. So they totaled that car out, and that car had a similar wrap to this, like actually very similar, just different colors, and got rear-ended. Still kind of messed up from it now, but someone came over the hill doing about 80 miles an hour. We were at a stoplight, and he just plowed into me and my friend that was behind me. So he totaled a Kona in, and he totaled the Elantra in. So after that, we end up finding this, which is a 2023, and it was the last one that they had because they were rolling into the 2024s in April. So I ended up picking this up because it was stick shift. And the only one I can find in Jersey, PA, New York, Maryland, everything. And so that's where we are now. We're about 6 to 7 months in with this car now. So with the DCT, you really can't go over, I believe, 400 pound-feet of torque because it really starts to slip. And at the time that the car was totaled, that car was making around 429 wheel torque. So that trans was screaming, and it was slipping on me, but it was still very, very quick for what it was. Like that car was still averaging like a mid 10, 60 to 130 with just the intake, downpipe, and water meth. So this car, we get into this car. This is still N75 tuned. So the way I looked at it, there are like 4 or 5 different tuners out there for these cars. You got N75, that's what I'm tuned by. You got 6, you got lap 3, you got 845, you got torque. So I tried to do my research in all of the tuners that's out there and tried to talk to them about what they know. So I had the best conversation with Daniel from N75. So that's why I went with N75, but all of the tuners honestly are really good. So you can't go wrong when it comes to that. But this car has a intake light, so it's still a stock box, but just slightly bigger piping. It has the inlet, upgraded turbo, has custom exhaust. We have bigger piping for the intercooler, bigger piping for the cold pipe, water meth injection. So right now this car is on like low boost because we're still trying to fill out like how it is on this stock clutch. I'm waiting for my stage 2 clutch right now so I could turn it up, but we're on low boost right now, so it's probably only making about 380 wheel, but it's still pretty fun. Like if you hear this thing, it screams. Like it's an absolute riot to drive. It makes it like really, really crazy, but still very civilized for normal driving. So what I tell people is, like, when you're looking into all the cars that you got that's in this same like segment somewhat, like you got the Type R, the Integra Type S, which is one of my favorites. Like, man, that Integra Type S looks amazing to me. You got Focus RS. If you want to go back a little bit further, you got the GTI. Out of all those cars, this is the cheapest to mod. Like, you think about it, the intake, it cost me $200. The water meth injection cost me $500. The tune at the time I think was like 800 or something like that with the actual device. So to get this car, let's say you don't want to go turbo, you just want to keep your stock turbo, but you want near 400 wheel. With just those mods that I listed, you could be at 400 wheel and have yourself like a very, very quick, very good, everyday all around car. And from owning this thing for, I'd say, 6 or 7 months and owning the DCT, I can say with confidence that I think I trust Hyundai at this point. They're a little harsh when it comes to modding the car. Like, they want you to mod it, but they don't want you to mod it. But I think they've came a long way. It's not the same brand it used to be years ago. Like this, the Hyundai that's going after performance ever since they got Albert Bierman and some of those other guys, man, they're doing something right. $35,000. That's what it costs to get like a 2024 in a DCT, I believe, or 6-speed. You can't go wrong. Like, you can't beat the price. You can't beat the price to mod, and then the smiles you get. Like, driving this car is something else. And then the pops and bangs are nice. The livability, like, one of my friends, he's like 6'2". My cousin's like 6'3". They sit in the back of this thing comfortably, like with my normal seating position. So I don't got to move up or like move it just enough. Hey, you got room back there? I know they got room. So I'm like, hey, get in the back, you know? So I think that's a big thing for me because I always have like friends and family in this car. So for me, space was a big thing. That's why I wanted the truck. And, you know, now I feel like I can get a truck comfortably. And this is going to be like the main car. Even though I have a daily now, this is my daily. That's supposed to be the fun race car. But I still drive this more than my daily. So that's why I'm selling my daily now. So, you know, you can't go wrong. Hyundai did something good. So for the future for this car, I think, like, I did just do the upgraded turbo on this thing, but honestly, like, I was going to keep it at like maybe anywhere between 460 and 480 wheel. But after doing some digging, shout out to my boy Anuj, he sent me a list of like all the parts I need to build this thing. And surprisingly, with bottom end, you're at like 2,000. So I think I'm going to build the bottom end of this thing, and then you can use the Evo head. So I'm going to probably get like a nice done-up head off of the Evo, throw that on here, and then have it set for low boost. So probably anywhere between 600. And I was thinking of like going after the record. My guy up there, he's in New York. He has the record for upgraded turbo, his 60 to 130. So I'm coming for that. I'm coming for that time. Right now, we do have the stock turbo record for this car, and I think let's push this platform and see how far we can take it. Like, I know the guys in Germany, they take these cars pretty far, and in the US, I haven't seen a built one. Like, I know there's one that Six working on, but I don't know. I might have to build this thing up because it's not as expensive as I thought it would be. And being that all the money that I spent on like past cars, I could definitely do that on here. And it'd be cool to see what this thing could take, especially with even if I go like really low and just do like the head gaskets and the head bolts, I think I could still push it to 550 with that. Now, what these engines can take, the highest I seen was like 550, but again, I don't know, how many other cars and if this car would take that. So to be on the safe side, I definitely want to build this thing up a little bit, see what it can do. And I want to get into some track driving. So try and take this thing to the track and see, learn how to drive on the circuit. I have been to the drag strip a few times with this thing. I know it's not a drag car. It's really hard to launch this thing, but I feel like getting into a little bit of it all, this car can take it. So again, this platform is really good. I think I could call it just as good as the Volkswagen platform. And the Type R's, you know, those cars, they got the name, the history behind it. This car has no history but, you know, Hyundai's bad reputation. But they're making history with these things. And if you know, you know, these cars have been winning the TCR division like 4 years in a row. So Hyundai's been doing great. And I'm excited to see what I can do. I'm excited to see what others can do. If you want, you can always look. Like, I have a YouTube channel like based on all the cars that I've raced in Mexico. And man, this car just, it never ceased to impress anyone that sees it or wants to take a ride in it or anything like that. So I think with that, just keeping crazy looking wraps on it, and you see the wheels, like I do all of this, like just trying to keep it artsy as possible. So I think that's it on this car. I'm going to get more into trucks. So with that being said, for the Hyundai brand, if you're looking at it, it's a win. If you're looking at the GTI, you're looking at any of those other cars, I feel like you shouldn't just be so biased on that car. Like, look around at all the options you got and then make your decision then. Because if you don't expand your mind, you never know. So don't just go off of what you see online and the testers. Go get a feel of what you in particularly like. And if you happen to drive the GTI and you feel like that's more your speed, so be it. If the Honda is more your speed, that's fine. But give a chance. Give a chance to these things. They're amazing for what they are. And again, the price just can't be beat.
Aftermarket exhaust.
Yeah.
Aftermarket exhaust, right?
Yep.
What is it?
Oh, well, it's custom. So I have like a catless downpipe and nothing else.
What's it, like straight pipe?
Yeah, it's like basically straight.
So now, just like, because I know these have the valved exhaust. How does that work with the valved exhaust?
I just changed the spring on it, and my spring broke. So I don't have the quiet eco mode anymore right now.
It's always just as loud?
I'm waiting for the new spring to come in.
That turbo sounds crazy.
Yeah, it does. Oh, you haven't even heard it? Yeah, it's... Once it starts screaming, it's like, what in the world?
So you're making, was it 380 wheel horsepower?
Yeah, and this is like low boost, like super low, so I don't like...
Oh, because you were
mess
saying,
with
you've had this turbo 2-3 weeks?
Yeah.
Brand new, low boost, making 380 wheel. That's insane. When this thing's like fully tuned.
Yeah, it's going to be insane.
I can't imagine.
Like, it should be making 100 more wheel than what it's making now.
100 more wheel?
Yeah.
Damn.
Yeah, it's going to be
so
insane.
Close to 500 wheel horsepower.
Yeah, that's what my goal is. 480 to 500. That's the goal.
In a car that weighs 3,200 pounds. Now, have you run into any issues with torque steer or?
Not really. So I have the lower motor mount on this thing, and it helps like the wheel hop. But if I just go from a dead stop and it's like kind of cold outside, it will hop a little bit. But now that it's been warm, I haven't had any hop. Like, it'll just like spin, but go. But you know, the steering, like the torque steer, I don't think is really prominent on this type of boost. Like, I think I need a little bit more power, and then it'll start like sending me a little bit. But other than that, I mean, it's pretty straight. Like, I think this car needs an alignment right now, but I keep changing tires. I'm gonna have to get those Contis.
Have you changed up the suspension at all?
No.
You gotta make that right that truck just did.
Okay. I love that noise. I love the noise.
Yeah, I like this a lot.
Yeah.
And this is your daily driver, right?
Yeah. Not supposed to be, but it is.
So how is it daily driving it?
It's really good. Like, when I'm on the highway, honestly, this thing will get like 30 anywhere between 32 and 36
Really?
miles per gallon. If I'm not on it. If I'm on it, then I'll probably average like 22.
That's still not bad at all.
Yeah, it's not.
That's sick, dude. 400 wheel horsepower, you're getting 30-some miles to the gallon, coasting on the highway.
Yeah. Like usually when you got the air on, it won't pop much. I'm surprised it's popping a little bit. Like the air definitely alters. Like, let me show you. Like you might get a nice like boom on shift. Like it'll shoot out a fireball on shift, but like you hear it scream, like fun. That's crazy.
This is fun.
Yeah. That's why I tell people to drive it. Like it's crazy.
This is crazy, dude.
So these cars, they need the MEF injection to really like push this power down some. So the MEF injection, like I said, it keeps it cool.
You want to go into the MEF injection, how that works? Because I'll be the first, like, I don't really understand how all that works. So okay. If you want to go into that.
Yeah, so what MEF injection does is like I guess some type of like alcohol, and you mix it with a little bit of like distilled water. And what it does is you pour it right into your cold pipe, or some people put it into their hot pipe, so the air that's going in is a little cooler. So when you get on throttle slow, let's say you set it up to go on at 100% throttle, like so when you're matting it or you hit a certain boost number. I have it set up to come on automatically when I hit 10 pounds of boost and fully spray at 14, and sprays this liquid into your piping system where your cold air is coming out. That's the way I have it, the cold air. So it turns that temperature from, let's say if it came out and it's about 110, intake temps, that's going to drop it down to 60 by the time it like starts like really spraying at it. So then it gets into it's huge. So it's like you have an intercooler only when you're like an aftermarket intercooler only when you're matting on it. But other than that, when it gets into your combustion chamber, it's upping your fuel. So now if you got 93 in there, it's going to turn it into, depending on your mixture, like 108, 110. So you're getting a big boost in your octane as well as a big cool. So the stuff is flammable, but from what I've seen, it's only flammable if you get fire on it.
Yeah.
So I've had it where I've had a leak before and it's sprayed all over the motor. The motor's like piping hot. Nothing's happened. I just had like a pink residue.
Can make this right.
So I stopped using the boost juice and started mixing my own. So this stuff is actually really good. Like it's just VP M1, and I usually do like a 90-10.
Dude, this is insane.
It is. It is. I'm like, man, when I turn it up, man, this is gonna be crazy. But that's what I could call this car. Like they say, oh, how is it on this car? It's kind of crazy. Like it's violent but smooth. So I could be like civilized, like I'm doing now, and then say somebody comes next to you and you're in the middle of Mexico.
You just downshift and you're flying.
And you see that the turbo does take a little bit of time to spool. The stock turbo used to punch like so much crazier.
You were saying,
believe it or not.
You said what, you had a stock turbo record?
Yeah. So I was trying my best to push that car to go like mid nines, like 60 to 130. So the best time I got was like a 986, which that was the best I could do. And believe it or not, that turbo was blown.
But again, we're talking about a 9-second daily driver. Like that's insane.
That's pretty good. Because my goal was to make this car just as quick as a M340 could be with a downpipe tuning E. So I'm like, can I get that from this car? Because the majority of my friends got M340s or some type of B58 of that, So the fact that this car can keep up, I'm happy with that.
And it's probably way lighter too.
Yeah, this is 3,086.
3,086 pounds?
Mm-hmm.
I thought these things weighed like 32, 33.
The DCT is 3296.
Really?
Yeah.
Really? So
Yep.
the manual sheds 200 pounds?
Just about. I believe it's like 3,086 or 3,186.
That's
I gotta
still
get that.
like 3,200 pounds. That's
Yeah.
That's light.
And I keep like all my tools in the back. So
You were saying with the tuning too. So obviously there's like, I don't think Cobb has support for this. Is it just like OBD2 plugins?
yeah. So which way?
You can go right.
Okay. So with this car, I have.
sick.
Yeah, it is. Wow. Nice C10.
Was that like an old?
Yeah, Chevy C10 pickup. I'm a big truck head too.
Yeah.
So this thing has what you call the EK1,
Uh-huh.
and it plugs into the ODB, and it reads your AFR, your
Mhm.
boost, your fuel trims, all the stuff that you need to know. And then, like, say you want to tune it, you just turn the car on the ACC, right computer, and it puts your tune on in like a minute and a half. So I got like probably 8 different tunes for this car, but that's like for the stock turbo configuration. So this thing now, like for the upgraded turbo, I don't have a specific tune for it just as of yet, because my tuner knows me very well, and he's like, you need to relax and get your clutch in there first, because
Yeah. On the stock clutch, which is insane.
yeah. But I mean, it's still pulling. For this being like stage 1, this does not feel like stage 1 on the stock turbo. Like stage 1 on the stock turbo, you'll be at like, with no mods, like 320, something around there. And then where I was at like 380 when I took the stock turbo off. Still was able to get a record on there, which I'm surprised. That turbo was smoking something crazy, man. Like, I'd be at a light like this right now, and you'll see like a little puff of blue smoke come, and I'm like, oh man, I gotta get this thing off. But
You got that record though. That's actually crazy.
yeah, man, I was pushing boundaries, man. I was like, can you do it with all the safeties and stuff on? It can be done. So like, say if the car itself is like, hey, I don't like the way this fuel trim is, and it decides to cut power to protect itself, it will still protect itself. So this car is very smart. If anything's off, if it overboosts, it'll give you a check engine light and be like, hey, relax. And then it'll turn the check engine light off after a couple minutes.
Really?
Yeah.
So it has like a little warning thing.
Yeah.
You can keep going straight if you want to do like a little highway rip. I wanted to hit on like this. You're making this power with pump gas 93. You're not ethanol tuned or anything. Have you considered it? Have you tried it before on the old?
So I definitely
Elantra, or?
tried E30 on the old car on the DCT. Oh my God, I loved it.
Yeah.
I loved it.
Crazy
I did it the
torque?
Yeah. So me and my friend that has a Mustang, he's in my group. When we raced the first time, I would get like a jump and then he'll slowly like catch me, right? He has a 5.0 with a tune and some little bolt-ons. And I put that E in, it was just like, bam, I am gone.
Yeah.
Like the difference was insane, but getting E like on a normal is still like an hour either north or an hour south. So I'm like, I don't want to keep doing this. So that's why I decided to go with the meth injection. So I believe with E, it was pushing the torque. So I don't know if the DCT would have liked it or not. But now this thing can easily, like, I can say I'm not scared of 5.0s, and I love my 5.0s, but I don't think this thing would have an issue.
Yeah, I can't imagine just pulling up on a 5.0 and ripping it and being gone.
Yeah.
And then you said
Especially with a four-cylinder.
you had plans to get this on the track. So eventually, do you want to keep this as a daily driver? Just have it like as a crazy street machine?
It's still
Or
going to be somewhat, yeah.
You don't want to like just do like a full track build?
If I did, believe it or not, I would probably get into drifting. And
This?
Not with this.
Okay.
I would get me a 2-valve Mustang, Still, like, even though I have this, I'm still 100% a Mustang guy.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I love all cars, but the Mustangs just got me. Like, I could go for any Dodge product. Like, I like the Challengers, the Chargers. I like the Stealth, the RT Stealth from back in the day with the VR4 engine in
they
there.
They were 3000 GTs, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
I love those
are
things.
So nice.
I had a LeBaron, a Chrysler LeBaron. I forgot to add that in there. It was so many cars. Yeah, it's a car from like the late 80s, early 90s. And that car came with a stick shift.
It sounds familiar, but I can't picture it.
V6. So it was very oddball. It's called a Chrysler LeBaron GTC.
Mm-hmm.
And I threw wheels on that and a side exhaust. It was crazy, but like when I tell you I've had like cars all across the board, this thing definitely like is one of my more fun cars that I've driven. And the fact that I go to the pump 93, I'm spending 35 to 40 bucks to fill this thing up.
You said like getting 30-something miles to the gallon.
Mm-hmm.
Now, this is manual too, and you were saying it's difficult to find any N vehicle in manual.
Yeah.
So how hard was that for you?
Finding this one took a few. A friend of mine's named Joyce, she actually found it. So if you're looking for a Performance Blue, good luck. A Performance Blue stick shift, I don't know if it can be found.
It sounds so good with the turbo.
Yeah, it does. Like it literally just puts a smile on your face. Like you can't ever have a bad day. Hop in this car.
Oh, I can't imagine.
Like
that's the best part of making it a daily. You know, you hop in and just rip it at any moment. Like you were saying, it's still a good economy car.
Yep. As I said, it just can't be beat. Like for the price. You got your normal mode. I don't have normal mode right now, like I said. Like, it just won't make a difference except for stop popping. But it usually, when the spring was working, it would get super quiet to the point where you would think you're in like a base Elantra with no power.
This exit just loop back around.
Okay.
And that's nice because you can still have it be sedated when like...
Like say if I got my mom in the car and she doesn't like loud cars.
I was saying like it's like night and you're trying to like pull in late. You know, you don't want all the pops and bangs and all that crazy stuff.
Exactly. And this clutch, honestly.
Oh, that's what I was gonna ask about too. Modern day clutches, I'm not a big fan of. I've driven like new Toyotas and stuff, and they feel so like fake. You know, in your experience, how does this compare? Because you've obviously driven a lot of cars.
The most difficult car I would say I've owned is having a Stage 2, Stage 3 in the Mustang. And that was the most difficult for people, like my friends, to drive because I had a cam in that. Had a Stage 3 Todd Warren cam. For those guys that know Ford, Todd Warren is a big cam maker, and he makes a lot of performance parts for Fords. I let a lot of my friends drive it, and they like bucking back and forth.
Yeah.
This clutch I feel like is super smooth, but I've still had friends hop in here and stall.
Really?
And they're like, wow, this is a difficult one to drive. Like it takes something to get used to. But with this car, you really have to feel it. I feel like this is very much so a driver's car. So it's not gonna, if this is your first stick shift, it's going to take some getting used to. Like I'm teaching my fiance how to drive it right now. Like she got the Mustang down pat.
It's a crazy car to start on.
Yeah, this clutch is a little higher up, so you just have to get used to feeling it. It's not one of those cars you let off the clutch and it'll start rolling enough for you to just take your foot off the clutch and it's rolling. It wants driver input. It's 100% a driver's car. 100%. Once you're moving already, like I feel it's impossible to money shift this thing. Like I money shifted the Mazda once. Thank God that car was slow, because if I was really moving, I probably would have grenaded that engine in the trans. But this car is really hard to, like, it puts you where you want to be, especially with the rev match. Like that's really nice.
So it's pretty forgiving to drive.
Yeah, it is.
Okay.
This clutch doesn't ever get like heavy on me. It doesn't feel mushy or weird. It always retains the same like feeling over and over. So it's a very good stick shift to drive. And I guess, like I keep saying, it's just from me driving my friend's Type R when he had the Type R at the time. I hopped in there. I'm like, yo, this car is fun. That's good. And then I hopped back into the DCT version of this, the first car, and I was like, damn, I kind of need a stick shift. And he hopped in and drove a 6-speed. He fell in love. He ended up selling his Type R. Traded that in and picked one of these up. His name's Dave. Good guy. He knows his cars. And he's like, man, my car isn't that smooth. It doesn't drive that smooth. Like, we're going over bumps, and this doesn't knock you around like you're in a track-focused car. Like, Throttle House just did a segment on this, on the 2024.
The fresh one, I watched that, yep.
Yeah, and this car was like 0.2 thousandths of a second slower than the Type R that has 265s and 50 more horsepower. And this has 245s and 270. Like, I'm like, that's impressive. You gotta give this car
some. You're talking like a $20,000-$30,000 savings over.
Yep.
Yeah. That's not negligible. You could buy another one.
The Type R's interior is nicer though. I'll say that.
But again,
yeah, I think that's where there's a little bit of a price difference, but it shouldn't be that much. In here, right?
Yeah, that's fine. All right. There's another turn in over there for this one.
Okay.
Last thing I wanted to hit on. Obviously, I've seen a lot with the Hyundai brand and all that. They really they're big on like the people that are getting into their brand and a lot of that enthusiast promotions and all that stuff. Have you gotten like anything out of that? Have they ever reached out and be like, yo, like we love what you're doing, or like anything like that?
Not necessarily. Like, there's some people who are like really influential in the in space. Like, I have my YouTube. It's NDriver KG. And I've been doing videos on this car for like the past 2 years. So talking about the DCT, the minute I got it, I was like, you know what, let me show people what it's like to own this thing and actually have a feel of it, and I own it. It's not like I'm just driving the car for 20-30 minutes and I have like a little bit of input. Like, I've been through the issues of this car, which is the injectors. I've been through the greats with this car, like finding out how good it is on gas, how well it drives. So honestly, I don't know. Like, it's really hard to say if I'm be considered influential, but I would love for them to reach out to me, maybe get something going. Like, if we can have some type of event sponsored and give people like a test drive of these cars. For people that don't know, they can find out like really what it's like to be behind the wheel if they're in the market for any of those cars. So I mean, that's what I think needs to happen, because people still just have so much doubt in their mind of Hyundai as a brand. Like, they're still like, oh, will it break down on me? Their engines only last 40,000 miles, and that's definitely not the case. I think these cars can definitely handle over 100,000 miles. So I've seen multiple Velosters that have over 140,000 miles, which is pretty insane. And this has almost that same engine as the Veloster, just slightly different bearings. This is a closed deck engine, so
it's a different turbo, isn't it?
Yeah, slightly bigger turbo. So this is equipped for a little bit more power. So I think everything's just a little bit easier when it comes to making power in this car. But other than that, you know, it is what it is with these. That would be nice.
Then you can just pull up to the front so I can get like that photo in the front of it there. Dude, this thing is crazy.
Yeah, it is.